Guys, welcome back to the Lifted podcast. Honestly, we were just laughing. Yeah, we literally just started this laughing. So I'm trying to keep it together to do this intro right now. So we have Fernie here, an online coach, wannabe influencer.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. She totally told me to say that. I'm not throwing anyone under the bus. But welcome to the Lifted podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And yes, I did say that. Because one day I want to be you someday, Elise.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh. Well,
Yeah.
we'll dye your hair blonde after.
Yeah.
And then we'll
Yeah,
have
maybe
you
give me some merch.
We'll have you halfway there.
Yeah.
We'll have to get stoned to go to the gym.
Yeah.
And then we'll be fine.
Just not finish a single sentence and laugh the whole time. We'll get through this. I think we will. We'll get through this. I'm not stoned today, so I feel pretty good about it.
Same. Well, yeah. Okay, we're going to jump right into it. So
Perfect.
you and I are both on social media.
Yes.
So we feel, okay, when we met the first time, we talked about how we can both feel this, like, do we post this? Do we not post this? Do we share this with our audience? Like, there's so many questions I feel like that go through your head before you post something or don't post something. I feel like I've had a million posts where I'm like, I really want to post this, but I'm not sure if I want to tell my audience, or I'm not sure if I'm ready to share this, or I'm not sure how they're going to take it, or, like the judgment around things. So like for yourself, how do you navigate that when you get into that kind of headspace?
Well, it's definitely hard just because, like you mentioned, it's like this place of uncertainty where it's like there's a part of you that wants to be authentic and you want to like show people like, oh, this is who I am, this is what I go through. But then there's also a part of you that you're like, okay, I'm sharing this part of myself with just like absolute strangers. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, well, and sometimes even people that know you, right? Which I feel like maybe even scarier because it's one thing to be like, okay, this person I don't know across the world watched my content and that's that. Like, cool, I have another view. But there's also the aspect of like, okay, maybe somebody I see at said reunion next week watched my content, they go up to you and they talk to you about these things. And I think that that's kind of like probably something that you have to think about because at the end of the day, regardless of how many followers you have or who watches your content, you're influencing, right? In some way. So it's like what you say matters because it might even be like that's the goal, right? Like you want people, even if it's just one person that takes value or likes your content, that's what you want. But on the contrary, it's like if you say something that maybe isn't very helpful or something that people don't agree with, it's like there's going to be a person that's going to be like, oh, like this, like she probably didn't know that she said that, or like what she said was wrong, or like there's also just like that judgment and don't even get me started on trolls and like all of that stuff where you're just like, what? You probably know all this too. Hey,
100%. And okay, I like what you said about like your family seeing shit or like, your friends or whatever, because I feel like that's what holds people back so much of the time. Because I mean, I just posted this thing on Instagram. I don't know if you saw it today, and it was talking about like getting yourself off and stuff.
Yeah.
And like, I have my mom on everything. So like,
my mom is my number one fan.
Same.
Love you, Mom.
But then you post shit like that and you're like, oh my God, my mom's gonna see this.
Yeah.
But like, you almost have to like not even think about that. Like you're saying, like you're influencing people. So it's like, you gotta say what you want to say no matter what people, like you really have to share
literally.
Your opinion.
It literally is like that. And also like to add another layer, it's like, when you post something and it's like, like people that are going to see it. But in the moment you're just kind of like, oh no, like this is so fun. Like this is so fun. But then people that like bring it up and it's a little bit cringy. You know what I mean? Like you're like, okay, like that doesn't stop you, and it shouldn't stop you from like posting and stuff, but it is kind of a little bit like that where you're just kind of like, or like when you're filming yourself at the gym, for example, where it's like in the moment you're like, okay, I'm working, I'm doing this, like it has a purpose and I'm having fun and I love it, right? But then somebody brings it up like in your real life You're like
Yeah.
when you're like posting content.
No, in real life. Or it's
And
like,
you're like, oh
or it's
my
like you
God.
go live on TikTok. Have you ever gone live on
Oh
TikTok?
no, I have not.
Yo, it's so scary because you're live and there's all these strangers and you're just like, this is great. Like I can just talk to these strangers like no problem. Someone you fucking know comes on
Oh
and
my
you're
God.
like, this just ruined the vibe. Now I
Yeah.
feel
Or like a boy from high
awkward.
school likes one of your pictures and you're like,
You're
that's
like,
not
oh.
it.
But yeah, if people bring it
Yeah.
up in real life, it's like you can post whatever you want and sometimes you just don't think about it and it's like the funniest thing to you. And then someone comes up to you and says it and you're like, you saw that? Like you saw me
Yeah, you're like,
on
whoa.
that's not what I wanted.
Yeah, it's like I thought that this was only gonna go specifically to the audience that I wanted to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I hear ya. It is a little bit like it's a little bit internally cringe, you know, but it's not like, you know, it's not gonna stop you from like
Not gonna
actually
stop
doing
you.
it.
Yeah.
Right?
So we're gonna take a turn and I know you when we were talking, you had said that you struggle with depression.
Yeah.
Or you
I
have
don't struggle
before.
actually. It comes very easily to me.
Oh, it just happens.
It just
You're
happens.
like it's all the
Yeah.
time, not a struggle.
It's all this time. It's just there. It lives. It just lives here.
So you live with depression.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for clarifying.
And yeah, not struggle, live. So
Yeah.
we'll change that. You live with depression.
Yes.
So what does that mean to you? Like what does it feel like to you to go through that?
Dude, it's like super debilitating. And I think that it's like it's weird, just especially because of just who I am. It's really weird to talk about because I feel like because I have been through like some shit in my life, as I'm sure a lot of people have, but it's like you go through shit, you don't want people to ever feel the way that you feel when you're in like those low lows. So you try to be like, you know, the life of the party, you try to crack jokes, you try to, you know, and as a disclaimer, as we get into this, humor is how I cope. So if I seem like I'm approaching some of these topics like a little bit insensitively, then it's just because that's how it is. I think it's good to laugh about things after you've processed them. So that's what I'm going to do. But yeah, that's kind of the vibe that I try to bring to that's the vibe I bring to the function is like I try to just make people's day, make them laugh so that I never feel that, you know, they never feel the way that I feel. So then when I kind of want to talk about what I'm going through, it just almost feels like just not authentic, even though if it is what I'm going through, because it's like that is not who I'm supposed to be in my head. So it really clashes. It's almost like you get this imposter syndrome, especially when you're in the fitness industry and you're in the business of making people feel good or bettering their lives and telling them that like they need to kind of get out of this hole on their own, and then you have these setbacks and you just feel like you're letting them down, right? It's like, oh, like it feels like you're not allowed to go through that. So I feel like that added pressure also, like, and the thing is that nobody's putting that pressure on you. Quite literally, it's just you on yourself, right? But at the end of the day, it's like that added pressure. You're just going like, oh shit, like, I hate feeling this way. Why do I feel this way when I want to make people feel not that way, right? It just feels like you just fall back into it, especially as somebody who has kind of been on a healing journey for years. I feel like every time that you fall back into it, it just feels worse because it's like, it's almost like your tolerance for it diminishes as you get better. You know what I mean? Because then it's like, oh, I thought I was doing better. And then you go back into like this spiral. And then you're like, okay, I'm back at square one. Like, I've made no progress. Like, I'm just going to be sad forever. And you do get to like those points where you're just like, oh shit, like this sucks.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, like once you've gone through it, I've been depressed probably twice that I can think of in my life where I was like, this is just like a never ending sadness that like, I have my bad days and whatever. But the first time, like you're talking about, like the second time I feel like was so much worse because I was like, oh my God, I've been through this before. And now I'm going through it again. And it's like, is this just going to be my whole life? Like you almost start thinking that.
No, literally. And the thing is that a part of you knows that it's not, right? You're like, it does get better. Like, it has gotten better. Like, you're going to get over this, like, just like you did the last time. Like, you know, you're capable of it. But in the moment, it feels just so debilitating, right? That you're like, I'm going to be stuck here for forever. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like, this is it for me. Like, that's only how you feel in the moment. Even though in the back of your mind, you do know, like, okay, we're going to get out of this one again. Like, you know, like there is no other option. You know, like
Yeah.
you have to just go for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, like, how has it affected your life? Like, in what ways has it?
There's I feel like the times where it has gotten really bad, it's like affected like my job, like not even just currently, but any job that I've had at the time of a bad episode or spiral. It's like I don't want to work. I don't want to attend to the things that I need to do. Like sometimes it's literally hard to even get out of bed. Like it's literally like you wake up and you lay in bed until you're like it's like 2 p.m. You're like I should probably eat something. You eat something because you have to, not because you're hungry, not because you feel like it. Then you go back to bed and you're like, you know what, I'm just gonna doom scroll. I'm just gonna do literally anything that will make me just not think about shit, basically. Right? Like, and you just do things for like instant gratification, whether it's like you watch a show or you, I don't know, you smoke or you know, you just do things that like you're just like, you know, like aren't necessarily good for you, like for prolonged periods of time, but you do that, but it genuinely feels like you can't move. So it like it stops me from, like I said, work. If my friends are like, oh, let's do something, and I say yes, but I'm, you know, just to be nice, but then on the day of, I'll just be like, oh, something came up, like nothing came up. I'm like literally bed rotting. I have been for like the last week because I
Mm-hmm.
just feel like shit, you know, and like, and I think like the worst part of being like in a growth phase, like, and the growth phase, like, you know, lasts forever, I find. But being in a growth phase is that when you do have those debilitating moments, you like think, like, I know I'm better than this. And I think that that's the hardest part, is because you're like, it's not like you've accepted the fact that you're depressed. It's the fact that you acknowledge that you're depressed and you don't want to be. And I think that that's like, oh fuck, like I am better than this. Like I can get myself out of this. Why can't I move? You know? And it's like, yeah, it's just it's like a battle with yourself. It's like a silent battle. It's like people only see you like, you know, bed rotting, not showering, you know, eating very little, or like not doing the things that you want to do, not hanging out with them, not texting them. And they're like, oh, she's just like whatever, and like she's not being a very good friend, she's not being a very good whatever, like, but it's like the 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 essence of who I am on the outside, like when I'm depressed, is like so different than what's going on in my mind, you know? Like in my head it's like me versus me, just being like, I don't want to be depressed. Why am I depressed? Why can't we get up right now? Why can't we do things? And yeah, and it's like such a struggle because it's like I said, a part of you is like, I know I'm gonna get out of this, but when? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's yeah, it's just it's a
It's
loop, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like it's just a battle in your head, and like I don't think it's hard to understand it until you've been through it, because I remember when I was growing up, like my sister went through a lot of stuff, and like she had gone through depression and stuff like that, and like I was always like, well, just do something. Like just get up and do something and whatever. And then, I started, I mean, I was like in high school at this point, so I was just like a bitch anyways. She also hated me, so it's fine. Um, but I was like that's kind of how I thought of it, was like just do something, like go for a walk, go do something, whatever. But then when I had gone through it, and I actually remember like when I had gone through it the first time, I was in Vancouver, and it was just like the first winter and it was so rainy, and I was like, this is awful. Like, because I grew up in Saskatchewan, like it was sunny all the time.
Yeah.
Like, even if it's cold, it's still sunny. In Vancouver, it's not. And I just got super depressed. And I remember like I called my mom and I was like, Mom, I haven't cried in like months. Like, it's crazy. I haven't cried. And she's like, well, okay, like, that's probably a good thing. And I was like, no, no, no. Like, I feel like I'm just genuinely not feeling anything right now. And it was like, I don't even really know how to describe that feeling. But then, like, I remember telling her that. And then for like weeks after that, I just like cried. And I just like, I didn't really know what was going on. Like, I honestly didn't even know I was depressed until like years later. And I was like, that was fucking depression. But it's like, I was in that cycle of like, oh my God, like I don't want to do anything. Like I don't think I called into work. I think I was still going, but like I remember canceling on my friends constantly and I never had a reason. And I just remember, yeah, it was so awful. Like just being in that cycle, you
Yeah.
know?
No, I hear you. And that whole I like that thought of um not knowing that you were in it until like, in retrospect, you're like, "Oh shit, I was like very severely depressed." I feel like a lot of people who experience it, especially for the first time, I feel like a lot of people aren't really aware of it. So they don't know how to deal with it because they're just kind of like, this has never happened to me before. And I find that it happens a lot, not just with like teenagers, because that's kind of where they're, when you're developing a personality for the most part. But yeah, like with young adults who are like trying to figure life out, and and it's just like there's so much thrown at you. It's like you literally graduate high school and then it's like, oh, you have to live as an adult and you have to like pay bills and keep your interpersonal relationships and have a job and be successful and figure out if you want to have kids, if you want to get married, if you want to do whatever. And then it's like people are like, oh, why am I so sad all the time? And it's like, like
Life.
life sucks, dude. And
Yeah.
that's another thing. It's like it's it's really it's really hard, like when you go through that, especially not knowing what it is, right? Because it's like you said, it's like you go through it again and you kind of know what it is, and then brings that frustration of like, I know I can get out of this, and I know what it is, but I can't do it, right? When you're like going through it for the first time, it's just kind of like, what is this? Like, what is happening to me? Why am I like this? And that's just so
Yeah,
confusing.
it's almost worse the second time because, or like the times after, because like you're saying, like the first time you have no idea and then you got through it. And
Yeah.
then the second time, you're like, that's when the battle starts in your head, where you're like, I've done this, I've been through this. When the fuck is it going to end? Because last time it was 3 weeks, now it's going to be like a month or something. And you're like trying to figure out, it's almost like you're trying to put a time limit on it, but at the same time, like there is no time limit. Like
No.
it happens for as long as it fucking happens. And like as much as you try to pull yourself out, like, I remember the second time that I went through it, I like would go for walks and shit, and it wouldn't even make me feel better. I would feel fine for the walk, and then I'd go home and I'd be like, this is awful. Like I
Yeah, you'd
don't
be
even
like,
feel
when did I
good.
get out of bed?
I'm like,
Yeah.
what was the point of that? It didn't do anything.
Yeah.
So through all of this, like, take us to one of your lowest moments. Like, what was that like, and what that you remember?
Um, yeah. So I think one of my lowest moments was probably like in high school when I was like 17. I like I remember just being like so angry and like so sad. But I was like I like was not the kind of person that ever externalized any of my emotions. Like I didn't cry, I didn't get angry. Like I was very like neutral on the outside. Um and I always just thought that like if I was anything other than like a happy person on the outside, then it was just kind of like I was just like the party pooper, or I was just like the person that like nobody wanted to invite or whatever. Like it wasn't really like a validation thing because I've never really sought out external validation, but I didn't want to ruin people's day. You know what I mean? Like that was kind of my thing. So I
Do you feel like, sorry to interrupt you, do you
go
feel
ahead.
like that's from almost our parents?
Absolutely. My mom is such a people pleaser.
Same. No, I
Yeah.
think it's actually their generation.
Yeah.
Like, nothing against our parents at all. I think every generation has their problem.
Yeah.
But I genuinely think that, like, even my mom, like, she was like, oh, well, you can't act like that if we have people at the house, or you can't do this. Or, like, they were the generation where, like, if the house isn't spotless, nobody's coming over. Like,
Yeah.
it better be fucking clean because they cared so much about
Yeah.
what people thought. So I feel
Yeah.
like that rubbed off on us, and we're yeah,
Yeah,
anyways.
and it wasn't so much like, yeah, like I said, it wasn't, for me personally, wasn't so much like, oh, I'm scared that people are gonna think a certain way about me. It was more so like, I don't want to ruin people's day. Like I said, like it was like, I don't want to make somebody feel uncomfortable. I don't want, so I wasn't very vulnerable. I didn't share a lot about myself. I didn't like, so I was just bottling it up. Like it was quite literally just like, yeah, like it was all in there, but it was like there's no way out. Like I had no outlet. Like at the time I wasn't really talking to like um my friends about any of this stuff. I just like, you're so young. It's like you're like nobody has the mental capacity to like deal with this. Um so yeah, like it was just like I hit a very low point. So I attempted to unalive myself. And it was just kind of like it didn't work. Just in case you were wondering.
It didn't work.
It didn't
I'm
work.
still here.
Yeah. So it didn't work, and I remember like after it happened, I was just kind of like I was kind of sobbing in my room. I was home alone, and I I remember getting a text from like a friend I had at the time, and we were just kind of like um I guess just kind of like trauma bonding because we were both very depressed at the time. And I remember he was kind of the only person I talked to really, when I was like, well, I've been kind of feeling like this or whatever. But we rarely talked, but when we did, it was more so just about how we were feeling and stuff like that. And he texted me about something like super, like just unrelated, like just texted me about something. And I called him. Like I didn't even respond to his text. I called him and I was just like sobbing. And I was telling him like I want to die. Like I want like all this stuff. I didn't tell him what happened. I told him like later on, but like in that moment, I picked up, or he picked up the phone. And I was like, I want to die. And then he's like, no, you don't. And I was like, no, like I literally do.
You don't know what just
like,
happened.
Yeah, it's like you have no idea. And then he was just like, no, you don't. And then he started telling me like, think about like he just basically started listing things that I should be grateful for. Like think about how like the family that you have. Think about the people that love you, your friends, the people that like stick with you. Think about the delicious meal you're gonna have tomorrow morning, which like poor choice of words because I was like in the peak of my eating disorder as well. But I was like, hey, whatever, I'll let it slide. So then he was just like, yeah. So he was just like listing up all these things, and then I was like, yeah, okay, like maybe you're right, and that kind of calmed me down a little bit. Um, Basically, like after we hung up, I just like left it, pretend like nothing happened, went to bed, and just lived my life. Repressed it a little bit for like a week. And about a week later, as mentioned, I was kind of at the peak of my eating disorder, one of many, but the one at the time. And I like passed out. I was home alone and I passed out. I don't know for how long. It was probably brief, but like I passed out and then I woke up. And that was when I was like, "Hey, I don't want to die." Like I was like, "I want to live." I was like, "Could you imagine if my parents like came home and I was still passed out? Like, could you imagine if I had like died on accident and my parents came home?" Yeah, but it wasn't the week before. Like that was like whatever. It was when I passed out that I like had a moment where I was like, "Oh, maybe I don't want to die." Like yeah, and then yeah, like I started my healing immediately after that. Like that was the moment when I chose like I'm my only obstacle. I literally was like, that is when I had that realization. A lot of people don't have that realization until they're adults, but unfortunately for me, due to the circumstance, it came very quickly when I was 17, and I was like, I'm my only obstacle. I can choose to be depressed and sad and angry like for the rest of my life, or I can like fucking do something about it, right? And that's when I started like trying to get my shit together. Like it was super messy. Granted, like literally a week after that, somebody very close to me also attempted, and I was just like in and out of the psych ward, and like, kind of almost like seeing what could have happened to me, like literally a week later, like on somebody that I cared about, and I was like, this is awful. Like this fucking sucks. So I was like extremely traumatized. But at the time it's like you don't really think about it. You're like, oh, it's whatever. But yeah, then they worked through it, I worked through it, and then that was actually kind of what made me like knowing that they were getting help. Because they were the ones who like made the call. They were like, just for anonymity purposes, I can't say who, but like this person, like they're the ones who made the call because they were like, I need help. And I think seeing them get help and like going to visit them at like the psych ward and stuff like that, I was just kind of like, yeah, like I need to do that. So I started seeing like a counselor for the first time, and like I started like trying to heal like my relationships and just who I was and how much I cared about myself. That's when I started kind of like thinking about like exercising and like maybe not having an eating disorder, which like that one was like a longer, trickier road. But that's kind of when I started like really just picturing my life, because when you're in that state, you don't think you're going to be here for that long, so you're like, you don't care about what happens in a year, you don't care what happens. So that was kind of when I started being like, no, okay, like I'm going to apply to university, I'm going to like do all this stuff, like I have a success plan for myself now. And that's when all the growth really started happening. It was like, it's kind of morbid to say, but sometimes you do need like some shit like that to happen. Like you need to hit your lowest low to be like, fuck. And yeah, ever since, like it's just been like a healing journey, and it's only going to continue, right? But it's it's we're in a much better place now, and that was like I haven't even thought about that since like really, because it's just kind of like it doesn't benefit me, and I'm not that, like I'm not what I experienced, I'm not what I did. It's like I am who I am today because of how hard I've worked to be here.
Yeah, but you also had to go through that experience in order to get to where you are. Like, so you passed out from your eating disorder. Did you just not eat anything that day or something?
Yeah,
Or
I was
like,
just extremely malnourished.
whoa.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
well, I mean, like almost every girl has probably gone through an
Yeah.
eating disorder, like
Yeah.
of some sort. Either they're not eating, either they're throwing up their food,
Yeah, they're eating too much.
laxatives, eating too
Yeah.
much, yeah, binging, like
Yeah, see,
there's so many
I've
things.
had all of them. I've never thrown up though. I'm terrified of throwing up because I've gone through some pretty traumatic stuff, and I throw up immediately after.
Really?
Yeah. So like every time that something extremely traumatic has happened to me, I've thrown up. So I hate throwing up. It literally makes me go into like have a panic attack because it's just like PTSD.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I can
Wow.
watch other people throw up, like I don't have an issue with that. Like it's still gross, but it's like whatever. Like but when I do it, I'm just like, nope. Like nope. Like
Not
I cannot
happening.
it is
Like
not happening. Like you don't understand. Like I never throw up, like ever. And if
wow.
if I'm about to, it's like, no, I'm not. Like I'm not.
So, can you tell me a little bit about, because I've had one of my best friends a long time ago. I wasn't in the same country as her, was the thing. So all of a sudden she stopped messaging all of us. Like me, one of my friends was also friends with her, and she just stopped. And she had gotten very depressed, and she admitted herself into some sort of mental health something. Obviously didn't have her phone. Um, what happens? Like, can you give me a little bit of information? Like, if I were to say I was super depressed, or, I didn't think I was okay, and I was like, I want to admit myself, do they just keep you in there and you like see therapists? Like, how does that kind of
Yeah.
work, if you don't mind me
So
asking?
it's basically like um there's a lot of ways you can get in there. Like one of them is like, for example, if you're seeing a therapist, one of the legalities around it is that if you say that you want to end your life, they're legally obligated to tell somebody. So that's one way you can end up in there. Um, and then the other way is like you commit a crime or something and you're sought out, in court. They tell you that you're mentally ill and that's how that you go in there, or which is a more extreme situation, or you call and you're like, okay, I'm having a crisis and I want to end my life, and then they put you in there. So yeah, you just basically hang out in there. They like, it's kind of like, like if you've ever been in a hospital for anything, or you've been in a hospital with someone for anything, it's like the same thing. It's like they just put you in a room, like they give you food, check in on you, except that instead of it just being like, oh, you're in there hooked up with IVs or whatever, you're just kind of there chilling. Like, and it also depends on like why you're in there for. Like, as far as I know, it's just kind of like long-term patients are like allowed certain things, whereas like some others are not. Like some people, if they've tried to like hang themselves, like they're not allowed to have like shoelaces, or like, just things like that. They also just like, baby proof the rooms that they put people in and all that, and they literally just keep you there until a psychiatrist like tells you like, oh no, you're good to go, like you're not showing any signs of wanting to die, so you can leave. But it's, yeah, the system is kind of messed up because they don't have enough room for people who need the help. So yeah, like they let people go with like no, just like, oh, you seem fine, you haven't like cried or said something crazy in like a week, you can leave, or a few days.
I think I heard that it was kind of like
It's
messed
awful.
up. Like it's just not, they don't have enough rooms and stuff,
Yeah,
and they
and
don't.
like counseling is so expensive. Like therapy is so expensive. And any free service, it's like you have to wait so long. It's like there's like a waiting list because everybody needs counseling. Like I think it's like doctors, dude. Like, you with an appointment, you sit there for like 2 hours, and and you go in there for like 10 minutes, and they just give you pills, and then you leave, like that kind of thing, where it's like, you know so it's just like with counseling, it's like unless you're paying the big bucks and you're like, I'm gonna sit here and talk to you every single day this week and work through things, it's like there's not enough time, there's not enough help, like people are going through crisis, like,
Well, yeah, and like some people are like $200 an hour, and I'm like, where are people getting this money? Like
yeah,
for an hour, like
yeah,
people are getting paid $15 an hour everywhere. So like,
exactly.
where are we
And
getting this money for this?
oftentimes it's the people that have no money that have a lot of the issues that you need to talk to a therapist for,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's all just kind of correlated, low key, but
Such
it's just,
the world sucks.
yeah, literally. Oh my god, yeah, it sucks. Yeah.
So
Moral of the story: the world is shit.
everyone's depressed.
Yeah, everyone's depressed. Everybody wants to die.
Like,
Nobody's making money.
we both just like use humor as like our coping.
No,
Like,
literally. And yeah, you have to know who to who to say those kinds of jokes in front of, though. That's another thing. It's
oh,
like,
totally.
like wrapping it back around to like our first topic of conversation, where it's like sometimes like you want to post something vulnerable, but the way you do it is like, I'm gonna joke about it. That's why I did my little disclaimer earlier, because it's like, hey, if I seem a little bit insensitive about what I'm gonna talk about, it's just because that's just how I cope. It's like you just laugh about it, right? And it's not, and the thing is that there's some people who laugh about things that they haven't quite processed, right? But I think there's a bit of a difference in like tone when the joke is delivered. You know what I mean? Like I
Definitely.
feel like people who aren't quite there, like, and they joke about it, like it almost feels serious. But with, some people, it's just kind of like, oh, that's so funny, like.
Yeah, like that's hilarious. And then some people you're like, are you okay? Like, are
Yeah,
you genuinely okay?
yeah, no,
So
literally.
when you get in these headspaces, like say you're, because I think we all fall back into it. Like I think we all have those times when we're like, fuck, like, am I depressed again? Or am I getting to be that way? What do you do? Like, what is your, when it first starts coming on, or when you first start being like, oh my God, I like feel like I felt this before or whatever? Like, what are some things that you do?
um so I will say, like, preventative action is not my specialty. It should be. I think everybody should be good at it. Um, I do try to kind of like keep myself busy, because it's just a distraction. It's like, okay, I need to like get out of it, and like I think for me personally, like one of the biggest correlations between my sadness and my life is like my productivity. So like if I'm productive, I feel a lot better. If I'm not, like that's kind of like unfortunately how a lot of people measure their happiness is how productive they are, which like shouldn't be the case. But because that is all you can really do, right? Like it's like what else are you really doing other than like working and like running, like doing chores and like running errands and like whatever, like if you're not actively doing those things, and like what the heck else are you doing, right? So for me it's more like it's just about staying busy, being productive, like trying to make a plan. But even sometimes when you do that, again, it's easier said than done. um and yeah, sometimes it's hard, like even if you have a plan, even if you're like, oh, this is what I'm gonna do to keep myself busy today, sometimes it's just like you can't even move. You're like, I can't even do this. Like,
You're like in bed, like,
yeah,
yeah, I have my to-do list, but like, fuck, I can't even get out of bed.
yeah,
Like, I can't even do the first thing on my
no,
to-do
exactly.
list.
And I'm also
Yeah.
like an overachiever, so I'm not, as much as I advise that you start small, I'm the kind of person that like will make a list and I'm like, okay, I have to get all these things done tomorrow to feel good about myself and like get back to my normal life. And then I wake up and I'm like, are you kidding? Why did I make like there is no way. Like do not have the energy to do the 10 things that I said I would do. Like, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have a perfect morning tomorrow, and then after that I'm gonna have a perfect morning after that every single day. It never happens, I can I can tell you. So
I feel like
yeah.
that's refreshing for people to hear. I feel like
Yeah.
all we see on social media right now is like my get ready with me, like 5 a.m. go to the gym, like, and I'm like,
Yeah.
this is fucking
Oh my god, like
ridiculous.
those like my 5 to 9 before my 9 to 5.
Oh
Dude,
my
it's like
God.
you want to know what I did before work this morning? I woke up. Like that's it.
Yeah, I woke up 5 minutes before I had to leave the fucking
Literally.
house. Like, no,
Yeah.
honestly, and I think it's so overwhelming. Like, I even find myself scrolling on social media, and I am just like, first of all, I compare so much, but also like I don't really want to be up at 4 a.m. for the gym.
Yeah.
And like, there's so much pressure for all these people that, like, if I think about, like, I've got my gym routine down, I've got my business, I'm fine. I can go to the gym whenever the fuck I want, okay?
Yeah.
But if I'm thinking about like years ago and I'd be watching these girls, I would be so intimidating because I'm like, how am I supposed to do what you're doing? How am I supposed to get up at, like, I can't even get up at like 7 a.m. You guys are getting up at 4 to do all this stuff before your job. And it's like, it's so intimidating.
No, literally.
So I like that you said that. Like, I feel like it's just so
I
refreshing,
hear
to be
you. No,
honest.
but it's just like, and it's hard. It's again like that kind of like battle with yourself, because you're like, I know if I really wanted to, and I have. Like I have been the person who gets up at 4 in the morning and goes to the gym, goes home, gets ready, gets all their shit. Like when like my last prep, like my last bodybuilding prep, I was in the gym for 4.5 hours every single day. Right? So I would go like to the gym in the morning, I would do my workout, then I'd go home, I'd shower, I'd pack my lunchbox of meal prep for the day. I'd go to work. I worked a very mentally taxing job at the time, and I was just like, I loved it, but it was super mentally taxing. And then I would do that, and then after that, I would go to the gym again and finish my cardio for the day, and I would do it like so. I get maybe like 6 hours of sleep, and I was just like on like a clock, which like in the moment you feel really great because you're just constantly on the go and you have that energy, but you do that long term and it's so exhausting. And that's another thing that I think that like I'll never shit on somebody who wakes up at 5 in the morning and does all that stuff, because I only wish I could do that, right? But just because I don't align with that doesn't mean that I'm gonna shit on them, but also because I don't do that doesn't mean that I'm not the best version of myself, or that I'm not doing what works for me and what is good for me. You know what I mean? It's like you said, at the end of the day, you have to do what works for you. Because a lot of people are like seeking advice because they're like, what's the magic thing that everybody's doing that makes them get their shit together and that they love? And the truth of the matter is that it's like they're just doing something that works for them and for their schedule and for who they are and how they function. Like if you're the kind of person that would rather go to the gym at 9:30 p.m., and that's what you like, but there's somebody on the internet telling you like, oh no, like this we have to go at 4:30 in the morning. Like fuck them, you know? Like good for them that they're getting up at 4:30 in the morning, but it's like it doesn't matter. Like you're still getting to the gym, you're still doing what you got to do. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like somebody tell like wagging a finger at you, that's all in your head. Like it's not that deep, you know? Like you could just do it as long as you're doing something. And I think that that's another thing. People focus so much on the things that they want to do that they aren't currently doing or that they can't do, or imposing all these like self-limiting beliefs on themselves and being like, oh, you're gonna do this, but it's like, why can't you just focus on what you can do instead? Even if like your list is 100 things and you can only do three, it's better than just sitting here and thinking about it and doing nothing. You know what I mean?
But that's what happens. So like even the to-do list, like you write this whole to-do list and you're like, tomorrow I'm gonna get all this shit done. And then the next day you wake up and you like can't get out of bed because you're like, fuck, I feel awful. I don't have energy for this, whatever. But it's like I think in those moments, and I think it's really fucking hard when you're in that
Mm-hmm.
headspace because, like, on a normal day, you could probably look at that list and be like, oh my God, I got 3 things done today. Fucking yes. But when you're in that headspace, you're like, okay, I can't even look at this list.
Yeah.
I've gotten 3 things done, but like, I didn't get the rest done. And then you're just like, it's like negative after negative after negative, and you just like put yourself in that situation. Whereas, like, when you're feeling great, you're normal, whatever, you're like, oh my God, I've gotten 3 things done. This is great. And you're so positive about
Yeah,
it. You're like,
literally.
what?
Yeah, it's like it like builds on itself, right? And it's like, yeah, like, cause it's like it's almost like this like affirming belief when you're in the headspace. Cause when you're kind of on a high, you're a little bit manic, and you're like, things are going well, and then the next thing that happens like also goes well, and you're like, oh my God, and then this thing happened, and then this thing happened, and that's really great, but it also kind of has its truth, in the opposite side of the spectrum, where it's like you're so sad that literally anything that happens, there was something negative and positive about all the situations that you'll ever be in, but it's like in that moment, you're literally like, wow, everything is negative and awful because you're like, nothing is worth doing. So it's like, even if you get something done, you're like, oh, I didn't do it well. Or like, I didn't do it because I wanted to. I did it because I had to. Or like, you just start like shitting on yourself and you're like, okay, even if I did one thing today, it's still like not enough. Right? Because it's like, if I was in a better mood, then I'd be doing more. Right?
Mm, there's always. So when you find that you're like in that space, I'm just curious because I feel like everyone kind of goes through it in a different way. Um, do you feel like you lean on your friends? Do you feel like you push your friends away? Do you feel like you have to almost force yourself to be with your friends? Like what do you do in the friend situation? Do you lean on people? Do you not? What's
That's
your
a really good
vibe?
question. So I don't know. It's weird because I have like a very tight knit like group of friends that I've been friends with since I was like a child, and I love them to bits. And they're like my sisters. They're not even just like casual friends. Like they feel like family. But at the end of the day, it's like I have like an actual sister. Granted, she's much younger than me, so I don't really feel like I can talk to her about some of this stuff yet. But like, even then, it's like there's something like I'm just the kind of person that I feel like I need to process things before I like talk to anybody about it. Like even with my boyfriend, it's like he's the kind of person that's like, oh, talk to me, tell me how you're feeling, and I'm the kind of person that's like, okay, I'm gonna go lock myself in my room and I'm gonna cry, and I'm not gonna talk to anybody because like this is what I need. I'm scared that if I talk right now in the state that I'm in, I'm gonna say something I regret, or I'm gonna say something stupid, or I'm not gonna be able to articulate, like, so I do like tend to push people away during those moments, just again because I don't want to ruin people's day. Like I don't want to ruin people's day because it's just like, what am I gonna say? Like I'm gonna go up to my friends, and even though I know that like they're the most supportive, kind humans ever, and I know that they would understand and that they would support me and that they would be so lovely about it. It's like, what am I gonna say? Like, oh, I'm depressed and I can't get out of bed. Like, what are they gonna say? Like, oh, don't be sad. Like, like, you know what I mean? Like, and I think like the worst part is because um this is probably just like a personal thing, but I feel like maybe a lot of people can relate to it, is that when you're in a growth journey and you learn a lot of skills on how to get yourself out of these situations, it's like when you're in that mindset, you know exactly what the fuck you need to do to get out of it. You know, it's not like I'm reaching, like I'm asking for help because I need to get out of this and like I don't know what to do. No, it's literally like I know exactly what I got to do. So if you sit, like if I talk to you about how I'm feeling and you sit here and give me advice, it's going to piss me off because you know, because it's like I know everything you're telling me. I understand what has to be done, how I got to do it, how it's got to be executed. I don't have an ounce of will to even start it, though. You know what I mean? Like, so I think that that's another thing. Maybe that's also part of the reason why I kind of isolate myself and don't really talk to anyone when I'm feeling like that, because it's like, what can you tell me that I don't already know? I know that sounds like awful, and I also am very much of the idea that like talking to people like always can spark something new you don't know, right? That's a self-limiting belief, thinking you know everything, right? But it's kind of like that's why it's like if I'm gonna talk to anybody, it's like I'm gonna talk to my therapist, because like they're gonna have like solution, like, you know, structured solutions, which I love. So right, instead of just like talking to somebody about it and them feeling bad for me or being like, oh, it's gonna be okay, like, yeah, I know, like I know it's gonna be okay, but it's like you're right, it just feels like in the moment it just feels like I'm wasting my time. um and it's, again, it's not to say that because people around me don't care about me or they don't have good advice or, you know, but that's what it feels like in the moment, you know what I mean? You're just like, nobody can help me. Not because I'm unhelpable, it's because I'm struggling, like I'm in the struggle and I'm choosing not to accept help right now because it's so hard to even do that, you know what I mean? So it's just kind of like, you know,
Yeah.
um that's kind of where that comes from, right? And I try not to be like, again, a Debbie Downer when I feel that way. Like it's a little different with my boyfriend because like we live together, so it's like he sees me every day, and it's like if I have a resting bitch face in the house when I'm feeling like that, he's gonna notice and he's gonna be like, okay, and then I'm not gonna want to talk about it, and then it's gonna be a whole thing. But yeah, like with friends, it's like, hey, you just don't have to text them. Like you just don't have to like,
You're not living with them. They
yeah,
don't
it's like they don't
know.
need, they like, yeah, and we're the kinds of friends too that's like we could like not see each other for like half the year, and then we all meet up again, and it's like we saw each other yesterday, you know. So it's that's like kind of normal with us. So it's like if I just don't text anybody for months, it's not gonna raise any red flags, truly, like it's not. So so that's why it's just kind of I feel like it'd be weirder if I was like, I'm struggling. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, I definitely do like just push people away. Um
I feel that. And you don't want to, like, I feel like I'm kind of the same way in the sense of I don't want to be a burden on people. Like, I don't want you to have to sit there and listen to me, you know, like, because I feel like I understand that everyone kind of goes through their own stuff. And, like, for me to just, you know, I mean, everyone struggles a lot of the time. So, like, for me to call up my friends every single time I'm struggling, they'd be like, bitch, you're crazy. Like, why are you
no,
calling me every
literally.
week, you
Oh
know?
God, no. And it's one thing to bring it up like one time, right? But then
Yeah.
if they call you like 4 weeks later
You're like,
and you're
dude,
still there, you're like, yeah, so like what are you supposed to say? Also, like when people ask you like how are you doing? I feel like you just say I'm fine. You know what I mean? Like it's not like I'm about to sit here and tell you like my life story and like you know what I mean? It's like we're just having a short conversation. If you're asking me how I'm doing, it's like it's probably not the time for us to sit and talk about my deepest dark secrets. Like like I'm just here to be like I'm fine. Let's move on with our day. You know what I mean? Even if I'm not. That's why it almost feels like a little odd to just be like, "Oh, but and by the way, I'm having a really hard time." Like, you know what I mean?
struggling, haven't got out of bed for like a week, but it's
Yeah,
fine, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. It's like I stink. I haven't showered. Yeah.
So I feel like, okay, so Lifted has become just like this platform for women where everyone just kind of supports each other and stuff. And I feel like a lot of the girls struggle like a lot of the time. And I just genuinely think that's fucking normal. I think we all struggle all the time. And I think it's just a thing. Like, I think the world is just hard. Everything's hard. Life is hard. There's a lot of positives, but also I think it's a huge struggle for everyone.
Yeah.
And I just want to know, like, what your advice would be for anyone that is struggling. Like, any of the girls that, maybe they are in bed, like, all week and they can't get out of bed. Maybe they, um, have canceled on their friends the last 4 times because they're like, I honestly, genuinely just don't feel good enough to see them. Or maybe they have a bunch of anxiety around people and they don't want to do that. And, they'd rather be by themselves.
Yeah.
But like, what advice would you give someone that's kind of going through a hard time like that?
Sucks to suck. No, I'm kidding.
And
no.
podcast.
Yeah, and a podcast. Yeah, no. I think. See, I feel like I've been asked this question before, and I feel like every time I want to answer it, like, oh, it's gonna be okay, and like, life gets better, because it does, right? But it doesn't just magically get better. It's just spewing a little bit of tough love here, but like, you are the only person that can get you out of any situation. And I feel like when I say that, people are always like, oh yeah, but like, you don't understand, like, it's really hard, like, I can't do anything, like, I'm depressed, or I have this and I can't do it. But it's like, okay, so just be depressed, all right? Be depressed for the rest of your life. And this is like the conversation that I have with myself, like, in my head when I'm in these moments, because it's like, we all know we don't want to be in that spot. We all know that we don't want to have to do those things when we're in that place. And it's not going to happen immediately, but at the end of the day, the one that chooses to get out of that is you, right? Like, you can either sit there and continuously tell yourself, like, oh, I can't get out of this because I feel this way, or I can't get out of this because this is in the way, or I have this obstacle, and this applies to anything in life, right? Like, a lot of the time, the reason people don't achieve their goals is because they have self-limiting beliefs. And the thing is that, as much as I love the phrase, it's easier said than done, if it's not done, you're not getting anywhere. And I think that that's kind of like something that we see a lot, especially now with social media. It's like, people, misery loves company. So like, sometimes you search people to relate to, not necessarily because you're like, oh, it makes me feel better that I relate to you. It's because you want to be okay. You want to normalize the fact that you're in a shitty place and other people are too, right? And it's like, no, yeah, I'm sharing all of the stuff that I went through, and like, I do that on my page because I want people to understand that other people do go through this stuff, but I'm not letting that shit get to me. You know what I mean? It's like, even if it takes me a month of being depressed, God knows that by week 5, like, some's gonna get done, because I'm gonna like, enough is enough. Sometimes you just need to be in it for a little bit to figure it out and be like, okay, I'm gonna get out. But like, that's the bottom line. That is the piece of advice, is that you are the only person that can get yourself out of anything. You can't wait for something to happen. You can't wait for a sign. You can't wait to feel motivated. You can't wait to feel better. You need to make shit happen so that you can feel motivated, so that you can feel like you can do stuff again. And sometimes it literally just takes time. And I think we're all just so impatient, and that's the hardest part, is the waiting aspect of things. But yeah, you're your own biggest obstacle, and the sooner you accept that, the easier your life gets.
I love that. It's easier said than done, but like, if nothing gets done, it's not done.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen.
That is the most brilliant fucking thing I've ever heard in my life, because it's so true. And so many people, every single time, they're always like, yeah, well, it's easier said than done, and like, whatever. And it almost takes, like, say you give someone some sort of advice, and you're like, fuck, I don't know, some kind of advice. And then you're like, well, yeah, I know, but like, easier said than done. It almost disregards what you just said, because you're like, nope, that shit's hard. So you don't even have to try to do it. Yeah.
Just because something's hard doesn't mean, that's exactly what that does. Yeah,
It's like,
absolutely.
yeah, I said that and you should probably do that, but easier said than done.
Yeah,
And then
it's
they're
easier
like,
said
oh
than
shit,
done.
I can't do
Okay,
that
well,
because
I
it's
can't do it
hard.
because it's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, literally. And that's
Yeah.
another thing. Yeah, like there's literally a part of your brain that, like prunes if you don't do things that you don't want to do. And it's like you feel more joy and like fulfillment when you do things even when you don't want to do them. Because it makes you feel like you achieved something. Because the thing is that if something's super easy, if somebody tells you like, "Oh, walk over there." You're like, "Oh, I know how to walk." You don't feel like you achieved anything because it's like you do that every fucking day, you know? But if somebody tells you like, "Oh, we're going to go do this crazy hike you've never done before," and you get to the top, you're going to feel accomplished. And it's going to be fucking hard. Like nobody could like even I love hiking, and when you're on the trail, you're like, "Fuck this, bro. I don't like hiking." You know? And like but you get to the top and you're like, "Oh yeah, no, like I understand. Like I feel like I achieved something." And that's kind of one of those things where it's like if everything was easy, you wouldn't be achieving anything because you'd already know how to do it. You would already be doing it, right?
Yeah.
So it's like
Almost every time halfway through a hike, I'm like, I hate hiking. This is
yeah.
awful. I don't even care about the top. And then you get to the top, you're like, this is great.
Yeah, you're like, "I'm glad I did that." No,
Yeah.
that's literally what it is. Yeah, no, it's yeah, like there's a book called The Mountain Is You, and I love it because it's like it's literally just like you're on the hike, you know? Like it's either you like choose to do it or you stop or you can literally wait at the bottom of the hill. This is not what the book is about, but just to add on to the analogy, you could wait at the bottom of the mountain and like just complain about how you have to do the hike. You really want to see the view at top, but like you know, you have to walk up there and it's going to be hard. So I'm just going to sit here for like an hour before I actually do the hike and like go see the view. Like no, why don't you just walk up? You can complain on the way up, but at least you're doing at least you're walking. And then when you get to the top, you're like, "Oh wow." Like, you know,
Worth it.
yeah.
Like now I'm up here way faster because I didn't spend an hour at the bottom.
No, literally.
Like complaining.
No,
Yeah.
exactly. It's like, and even if you're complaining on the way up, yeah, it's like, "Oh fuck, like my legs hurt, my knees are buckling, like I'm sweating, I'm carrying my backpack, like whatever, it's hot, I'm hungry." Like, yeah, like those are things that are gonna come up on the climb, so that's normal. But you're still climbing, regardless of how you feel, right? And you're gonna get to see the view at the end of at the end of the hike. So it's just kind of like having struggles, like feeling like that on the way up. That's normal. That's gonna happen. Taking breaks on the way up. That's also normal. But it would be silly to go up and almost be at the top and then be like, "I'm tired. I'm gonna go back down." Like what? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like 10 minutes from the top. Like just keep going.
Yeah. It's like you're so close. Yeah.
Yeah. um I mean, is there any last comments, advice, words, anything that you want to say before we end?
Um, Life is not that serious. We live on a floating rock. Like, be so real. Like, just, like, I feel like, obviously, like, don't break any laws or whatever. Like, don't be weird like that. But, like, yeah, like, you can literally do anything. Like, you have so much power. Anything that you feel like you cannot do is a limiting belief. Like that is literally what it comes down to is that yeah, it's a limiting belief. You can do literally anything unless you tell yourself you can't. And if you shy away from hard things, you're never going to learn how to do hard things ever.
Yeah, because you're never gonna have done them.
No, literally.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for coming on the Lifted podcast.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. It was awesome.
Yeah, I will put all of her socials in the description if you guys want to go check out her page. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.
Bye.